You know that the front page of the newspapers tomorrow will show Roger Clemens taking the oath. This was theater, just as Representative Issa had said right here on Fox Business yesterday. A lot of opportunity for many of the Congress people to grandstand, make some speeches, try and beat up on one side or the other in this steroid scandal.
And at the end of the day, you're going to see the one picture of Clemens, you're going to see another picture of McNamee, and where are we now? Any further? Did they actually make any real progress? Let's talk to our Fox panel about it. We have Peter Schiff, author of Crash Proof. Independent trader Eric Bolling is with us, as well as Tom Atkins of Remax Fair Lawn and Gary Kaltbaum from GaryK.com. Eric, you got some history with baseball. You used to have some skin in the game, literally, of yourself. What do you think of all this? First of all, are we any further today than we were yesterday?
Well, first of all, I love baseball. I love the Yankees. I even love Roger Clemens, but come on, Roger, come clean. Andy Pettit, your workout buddy, you talk. When you work out with a guy, you tell him everything. He admitted he used it. He also told his wife that Roger was using HGH. I mean, this guy, look, he's trying to cut losses. He's trying to stay down that denial lane. He's just got to come clean and say that.
Does baseball cut losses or increase the losses here? Keeping it to that business of baseball, Tom.
Baseball just looks ugly here because they're not policing themselves. And I got to tell you, there's one irony here that I'm not sure you guys are paying attention to here. It's congressmen who 8 years ago defended Bill Clinton's right to molest women and lie about it under oath is now saying, Mr. Clemens, you know, you might be committing perjury here. Like, well, and Roger Clemens should do the same thing Bill Clinton done. He should come out and say, I did it. So what? You know, and now what would America do? Like, okay.
Yeah, but he loses his endorsements, Peter. He loses a lot of those awards, certainly, that would really make his career.
Sure, but I still don't know why we're making such a big deal out of this. To me, it still looks like, remember the hearings from the old quiz shows? I mean, it's a lot of grandstanding for the politicians. Meanwhile, I think we're on the verge of a major economic collapse. And, you're talking about, Nero fiddling while Rome burns. I think when they write the history books on this period of time, stuff like this is not going to be insignificant.
Well, and you bring up a good point. I mean, the fact is, Gary, why the heck is Congress dealing with this at all? Baseball's a game. People pay to go to the game. It's a business. Baseball is a business. So why is Congress... I understand there's certain provisions about monopolies and so forth that get Congress involved, just as they got involved in those game hearings about 3 decades ago because they have some control over the airwaves. But shouldn't Congress just get out of this game?
Yes, they should. I don't know what they're sitting there wasting their day for. By the way, I thought Peter was going to blame the economy on Roger Clemens doing steroids also, so that didn't happen. Look, my point is onefold. I hate the Yankees. I hate Roger Clemens. But here's what I don't get about today. First off, Roger Clemens doesn't know what a vegan is. That's number one. But number two, you have a situation where the guys with the most important testimony admits to lying to these investigators on several occasions, and guess what? They're going by what he says now. Which is the lie? I think this was ridiculous. It's a waste of time. There are people dying in Darfur, but we're worried about a guy sticking a needle up his butt a couple of times.
Eric, superimposing those hearings with the president signing the stimulus package, clearly the president thinks there's something wrong with the economy, that he has to sign this multi-billion-dollar bill.
I'm wondering why we didn't have more, the stimulus package, which I think is a great idea, by the way. But going back to that real quick, it's not just about Roger Clemens using steroids. It's about sending a message to the kids. Is it okay to use drugs? Is it okay to enhance your performance by using these drugs? We have drug policies in this country that need to be addressed, and this is one of those things that needs to be. It's kind of that drug that no one really wanted to deal with before. Well, guess what, guys? We have to deal with it. Keep the drugs out of sports. Keep the drugs out of kids' hands, because they're trying to emulate.
This wasn't really about drugs. This wasn't really about even the business of baseball. This was about these two guys and who was telling the truth, and that's not the job of Congress.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I agree with you that you should have rules and laws about drugs and illegal drugs. Okay, fine. Let the local and federal, judges, go before and go in court, have your day, and be done with it. This is not where Congress has to be. You don't need congressional hearings to find this stuff out. If somebody's, as we said, stuck a needle in his butt, then let the local jurisdiction deal with it and be done with it.
Let's keep the drugs out of the economy too. You're telling me you don't like it when people are shooting up with steroids, but that's
I know what's the next thing coming out of your mouth.
That's the stimulus.
That's a great analogy. I give
That's
the
the
credit.
stimulus package. It's shooting us up with some more cheap money, some more inflation to get artificial performance.
What the stimulus package is,
what the stimulus package is we are going to discuss later.
Okay.
We're going to take a short break. Be right back with more of this shot of steroids on the stimulus package.
And the markets had a little.
Steve Harrigan.
So will Hugo Chávez's latest stunt actually backfire on him and motivate the U.S. to seek out totally new sources of oil in the Gulf or perhaps Anwar, or maybe put more effort into developing alternative fuels? Because you've seen some oil companies do that now.
Yeah, we have. Our Fox panel is back to talk about it. And, Eric, it is kind of two issues here. First of all, the question of Chávez, who's clearly a nut and is a real nut in our machinery here. But could it have a positive benefit in getting us off foreign oil?
If he were to cut off all sales to the U.S., I don't think he can do that. His economy is based on oil sales to the U.S. He sends about 1 million barrels a day.
So it's all rhetoric on his part.
It has to be rhetoric. That economy is on a thin thread right now. If he were to pull 1 million barrels out of the U.S., by the way, he's right. This is heavy sulfur oil that can't be refined in China. It can't be refined in Japan. It needs to come here. Listen, if he really wanted to stick it to the U.S., he owns Citgo. Petrovez owns Citgo. They own 6% of U.S. refining. If anything were to happen to that 6%, we're on such a thin line with our gasoline and heating oil supply.
Thanks a lot. You just gave him a great idea about how to mess us up.
Here's the thing. He cuts off oil supply. We have plenty of oil. We have 780 million barrels in our strategic petroleum reserve. We have ways to supply oil to the refineries. Keep your eye on those Citgo refineries. That's the real issue.
And Tom, Venezuela is the 4th largest importer to the U.S., so it's no small player in all of this. However, he shares a refining operation with ExxonMobil in Louisiana. So it just makes you wonder what's going on here.
Yeah, but look, on one hand, you're absolutely right on what that would do to the Venezuelan economy. On the other hand, it's not unlike silly socialists to screw their people in order to make a point. All you have to do is look at Castro, who keeps his people in abject poverty. North Korea, where people eat bark off of trees because there's not enough food to eat. I mean, literally, if you walk through Pyongyang, as far as the hand can reach, there's no bark on trees because people eat it. That's what it's like living in North Korea. That's what the socialist dictators are happy to do to their people to try to defeat those evil capitalists.
But, Peter, the point is, if the scenario worked out by Eric is at least something that these guys are thinking about, Citgo has some of the same business problems that PDVSA, the major oil company, does too. They are terribly run. He's fired all of the professional managers, put in his cronies, so they're in deep trouble too.
Sure, look, I think when guys like that talk, it's mainly for their own people to hear it. They want to act tough on the Americans, and we shouldn't really read that much into it. I think the broader problem are not only our dependence on foreign oil, but the fact that we can't even afford it. We're borrowing so much money from the rest of the world to pay for these imports. One of the biggest part of our trade deficit is oil. And where are we getting the money? We're borrowing it from the Saudis. We're borrowing it from the Chinese and the Japanese.
And then what are they
That's
doing?
a huge problem.
And then what are they doing? And then they're investing in our financial companies.
They're buying up our country out from under us. Where do you think all these sovereign wealth funds are coming from?
Hold on, let me bring Gary Kaltbaum into this. Gary, ConocoPhillips is taking a different tack with Venezuela, saying that they're going to sort of negotiate. That stock's up about 2% today. I mean, clearly these oil companies have some sense that they need some of Venezuela's operations in oil.
Well, I'm sure there is backroom negotiations and all this, but let's be something clear. Chávez's popularity is heading south in Venezuela. He does not have what he used to have as far as what people think of him. There's food shortages all over this place because he tried to fix prices. He's stealing food away from companies.
Grocers,
everything he's doing is an absolute joke right now. So this is all blah, blah, blah rhetoric, and he is not going to follow through on any of it. I'm not worried one way, shape, or form. And if we do lose a little oil, we'll get it from somewhere else.
He has the one most important thing that you need to run a country, the guns. And if you're a socialist, power flows from the barrel of a gun. That's what Chairman Mao said, and all socialists believe it, and they know that saying inside and out in the heart.
It's scary. It's scary that whose two best friends are? Ahmadinejad in Iran and the Bolivian Morales, who also...
Well, don't forget Fidel. He's not quite dead yet.
Right. But the cool thing about Fidel is when he goes, his brother Raul is much more friendly. He's more free marketer. So that tie may break.
He was still leading the execution squads.
These three amigos, what they're doing is nationalizing their oil, and they're not friendly to
But
Mexicans.
in a world right now, Peter, where any blip on the news wires about anything having to do with oil, whether it's inventories or something happening in Nigeria, Ahmadinejad or Hugo Chavez, affects the price of this, how then do we see the domino effect here in the U.S.?
Well, look, these things maybe on a day-to-day basis on the margin affect what traders are doing, and maybe there's a short-term opportunity. But long-term, you have to look at the bigger picture. What's driving oil prices higher, what's going to continue to drive oil prices higher, is the debasement of our money, and not only our money, but money all around the world.
Because it's actually
you have global inflation.
Petrodollars that it's denominated
central
in dollars.
banks are creating a lot of money. Money is losing value, so prices have to go up to compensate for the loss of value of paper currency. So you don't just see it in oil, you're seeing it in commodities across the board, all sorts of producer prices, and it's showing up in consumer
Gary,
prices.
go ahead.
Yeah, just remember one thing. With Chavez, money is power. And if he's selling less oil, he has less money, which means less power. That's why I think this is all a bunch of blah, blah rhetoric that will not be followed through on.
I think most of us would agree on that, right, Eric?
No, but can I address one of Peter's comments? When the rest of the world starts lowering their interest rates, like they will have to eventually, the ECB has to come down at some point, because you can't have this big discrepancy of the ECB
Which will
and the
lift
US,
up the value of the dollar.
Which will lift up the value of the dollar. It'll bring things like gold and oil down, and it'll kind of even the playing field.
Global inflation is already running out of control.
Where?
How can they
Where, Peter?
everywhere?
Where?
Look at the
Where?
inflation rates around the world.
I disagree with that.
Every
I
major
disagree with
economy
that.
is experiencing
They're
the
growth.
highest level. It's
They're
not growth,
growing.
it's inflation. No, growth causes prices to fall. Inflation causes prices to rise.
Here's one thing that's not falling, and it's the markets. We've got a little over an hour now to the closing bell, and the Dow Jones Industrials are up 138 points.
What a segue, Liz Clayman.
I'm
Good
working it.
Good going. Yeah, we'll be right back.
Very much, Adam. So with the stroke of that pen, has a Republican president set off class warfare?
Well, after all, the stimulus plan does take tax revenue collected from people in higher income brackets and hand it over to people who make less money. Let's ask our Fox panel about it. Does that bother you at all, Peter?
Well, I mean, of course, obviously, I'm not getting a check, but yeah, I think the biggest issue here is not the class warfare. It's a change in the way the government is injecting inflation into the monetary system. Basically, when the Fed does it, when the Fed is cutting interest rates, the new money is entering the monetary system through the banks. And that way we had these asset bubbles in stocks and in real estate. Ultimately, of course, the inflation went into commodity producer prices, consumer prices. But what they're doing now, finally, is dropping the money from helicopters. They are printing money up and giving it directly to the consumer to go out and spend it. So the impact on consumer prices will be more immediate. And this is a very bad precedent.
Let me bring up Gary Kalpom, the retail sales numbers. They surprised to the upside, better by 0.3%. And analysts, these brilliant analysts, were expecting a fall of 0.2%. Could that be psychologically already making the stimulus package a somewhat success, that people maybe started spending the money before they've even gotten the check?
I'm not sure of that. I can tell you that when I look at monthly retail numbers, they swing wildly, so I really don't put too much into 1 month. One thing I agree with Peter on here is that this proposal is pretty much insane in the effect of it's a one-time thing. It will do a one-time blip for GDP. But whenever the government gives out something to someone, it is taking money from somewhere else. And that's really the definition of class warfare. And as I have been saying, what do you tell Aunt Mary and Uncle Bob, who made $150,001 last year, that they don't deserve this because they've been a little more than successful than others?
I mean, you can't give it to everybody, Eric.
Why not? I mean, if the government's going to give it to 75%, why not give it to everybody? Listen, we're all equal, aren't we? We're all Americans. I don't see the sense in all this.
See, I spend my time on Wall Street. I'm trading. I see that the economy was slowing. This was the right thing at the right time. It was temporary, it was one time, and it was a stimulus package. And if anyone had any question whether it was stimulating, guys, look what happened at retail sales today. It brought up 0.3%.
It's a lagging indicator. Its checks won't be out for 10 weeks.
Let me just, that's right, but people are spending. They're spending their check now. I guarantee it. If they're not, they're going to pay down their debt that they're accumulating right now.
It's the same,
this is a great idea.
It's the same thing that happened back in the early 90s when we had welfare reform. It wasn't even enacted, and 2 million people just quit and went out and got jobs. It has a psychological effect. I agree with you. However, I'm also on board with Peter. It's a stupid thing to do. You're hoping that the psychological effect trumps the inflationary effect. Will it? I don't know. It might, but a lot depends on how it gets reported.
Peter brought up a great point a while ago, though, saying it's like giving yourself a transfusion from the left arm to the right arm with a leaky tube in the middle.
Yeah, sure. First of all, the last thing we need is consumers to spend more money. That's how we got into this mess in the first place. But if you look at those numbers that came out today, of course spending is up because prices are up. People have to spend more money. But if you look into the numbers, right, the amount of the family budget that goes for basic necessities like interest, like food, like energy, like health care is the highest it's been in the history of the data, going back to 1980.
If you have inflation and the spending's outstripping inflation, it still has a lot of consumer confidence behind it.
Gary Kalfon, I know you don't like the stimulus package, but you do like to pick some good names in the market that are affected by all the news events. What would you put your money into now, thinking that something might get a pop here?
Well, look, I think when we talk retail, they're acting better, but I think the only bull markets remain in the commodity areas, and there's a couple of subgroups out there. Everything else is basically starting to come off the floor a little bit.
Transports are up 39 points right now,
right.
I think.
But I call those bear market rallies. The real groups that are strong are commodities right now, and I'm not going really much further at this point in time.
You still on the sidelines, Eric?
No, not at all. No, I'm never on the sidelines. I look for these. Gary's right. The commodities have been in a bull run about 18 months. Probably will continue. But, Applied Materials came out this morning, and they really showed a little bit something. People have been beating up the techs for a long time.
Well, you mean came out with earnings yesterday?
Yesterday. Right. But this morning we started trading up $1.50, and that's a great move. And it also is forward-looking. And I think if the techs start to go,
and they're going
nicely on the AMAT numbers. Cisco a couple days ago, those weren't that bad. He just had the CEO had some forward-looking statements that people didn't like. Their numbers were great. You take that AMAT. You get techs to cooperate, this could be a really nice run.
Go ahead.
Look, AMAT's earnings were down 15%. Revenues were down 8% year over year. That is no great shakes. All that's happened here is Applied Materials lowered their numbers 3 weeks ago just to beat them now, helping it. And all these tech stocks are way oversold. I believe we can get a rally in tech because we're entering what I call a no-news period where we don't have any more earnings for a couple of months. But I don't think anything's changed fundamentally there right now.
I'm looking at NASDAQ right now, and it is across the board. There are only about 5 or 6 stocks of the NASDAQ that are down.
And this is those classic tempting things about the market. When it's going up, people start slobbering, going, should I do it? Should I do it? Should I get on? I'm looking big picture here, and I'm looking at Barack Obama, who is an incredibly powerful speaker. I think he's wrong on virtually everything that he's talking about, but what a great speaker he is. You get a Barack Obama president, this stock market's going to drop 5,000 or 6,000 points.
I totally disagree with you.
No.
Let me tell you something. The stock market under Democratic presidents has historically outperformed under Republican presidents. Of course, when you've got gridlock, where you have a Republican Congress and a Democratic president, you do the best.
You've got a very liberal, one of the most liberal presidents we will have ever had. You have a Congress who is very liberal, especially at the leadership positions. This is a Congress that wants to raise taxes. They want to increase spending. They want all these new programs to come out there. It's almost the exact opposite. You're
just going to wait till the election's over?
I'll tell you, I'm not putting a lot of money in the market right now. I'm scared.
Does that weigh on your decisions, Eric?
Honestly, the ending of the Bush tax cut concerns me greatly with my portfolio. If it looks like it's going to go that way.
Capital gains in particular.
Capital gains, both, and dividends, I'll probably back out and take a lot of money out of the market.
The big problem is that Obama is going to be inheriting the helm of the Hindenburg. So there's really nothing he can do here. But sure, they're going to be able to make things worse. I mean, if they raise...
Has he won already? Did I miss something? Is there not going to be a general election in November?
Thank you. At this point, but yeah, there's one thing to inherit the Hindenburg. It's nothing to go in there with a torch, and that's what Obama's doing.
Yes, he's going. Maybe it's going to crash a little bit faster, but we're going to have a lot of problems, and it would be much better if we could have somebody in office who understands the problems and what government
can
actually
Gary,
do.
are you going to, Gary, in order to take advantage of the tax cuts, are you going to be selling all your stocks before capital gains goes up again?
Well, first off, we don't know whether that's going to happen. Just remember, the rhetoric during the primaries will change once we get into the regular election, and I want to first see whether the Democrats start moving towards the middle, so I wouldn't go there just yet.
Okay, gang, we got to leave it at that.
Thank you.
Getting a student...
Here we go. We got moments till the close, and the markets are surging. Is this the stimulus rally, the Roger Clemens rally?
Don't say it's a Clemens rally. Let's hope not. At any rate, it's doing great. We're up 181 points right now. NASDAQ is where the real story is. It's up in 2.25%, up 51 points, almost 52 points. So there's a lot going on. Higher than expected retail sales last month. That's getting a lot of the credit here. The rally continues. Let's throw it to our panel. Eric, why?
Well, I think it has a lot to do with stimulus. Number one, the retail sales numbers were great, which I'm attributing to some people going out and spending
Like
their
your
stimulus.
cufflinks, by the way, which are marvelous.
Thank you very much.
They are.
Some great earnings. Deere had nice earnings. First Solar had nice earnings. There's some really good earnings
Although these
reports coming
solar
out
stocks are kind of overpriced.
Aren't
Liz
they
and I were
getting
talking about that.
They're getting very rich.
ratio
You're talking to the oil guy who doesn't like the solar stocks at all, but nonetheless, they're making some money. You have to say, give them credit for that. A lot of good things going on in the
Tom,
economy.
what do you think is the number one good thing that's helping enough to make a market rally today? And I know one day does not a trend make, but we look pretty good today.
You know, I always use this analogy. I think that Wall Street is like a 14-year-old boy. The Playboy magazine is about this far, and I do believe that this dumb stimulus package, which will not work probably, is getting people excited about it. If I'm on Wall Street, I'm buying for about a day and a half and getting out.
Gary Oldman in the Dracula movie. I was wondering where I'd seen you before. That was it. Take a look. There he is, Tom. All right. Yeah, okay. Peter, is there anything about this market that you trust right now? Because it is a big surge today.
Well, look, I mean, again, bear markets have rallies. It's a bear market rally. People get short. They cover. I mean, sure, and when the market starts to move against you, the short traders, by definition, they're there for the short term. They're trading the market, and, you know, they're going to buy if they think the trend is reversing. But, you know, the fundamentals for the market are lousy. It's a bear market. The market's going lower. And even if it's not going lower in nominal terms, it is going lower in real terms. Look at the value of the dollar. Look at the price of gold. Exactly.
Gary Kalpom, you were just saying in the last half hour, bear market rallies, things like that. Are you in agreement here?
As of right now, yeah, I have not seen the conditions, and I really haven't seen strong, compelling volume by the big institutional crowd that tells me really anything's changed. But I think you're getting a rally here. I think you're in the no news period for the NASDAQ. But I got to tell you, I'm noticing Tom, he let his hair down.
Fabulous.
What is it? Is it happy hour time already? Or
That's my request by some lovely lady in the green room.
You wouldn't notice.
Nah,
I don't want to take any attention away from Tom's hair right now, but I'll tell you what really turned these markets around yesterday when Warren Buffett came out and said, listen, I think I'm ready to step up and look at $800 billion worth of muni bonds to insure. By the way, guys, to reinsure. Right, I'm sorry, to reinsure, which that is when the market turned around. You watch the market, immediately the market went from slightly lower, took off like a rocket yesterday. He came out
before the bell futures started to turn
he
around.
came out today and he reiterated this morning, along with some good earnings. These things are important to the market. Let me just tell you, the one thing that people are talking about right now, that 3-month LIBOR rate, which is the rate that companies loan each other money at, has shrunk. It's come down, and that means credit markets may start to move a little bit. So these are all really good signs to me.
So I'll play a questioner here. We have 3 people here, and I'm besides me, I'm curious. How long of a rally is it? We got 173 points today so far. What do you guys look at? I'm looking at a day or two. Maybe I'm wrong, but what are you guys thinking?
Gary clearly thinks it's short term. Eric?
A day or two? I mean, I'm looking at 3 months from now, 6 months from now. These stimulus, forget stimulus. These lower interest rates will eventually work its way into the economy. The banks are going to make a lot of money with lower interest rates, and that's going to show up Q3 and Q4 of this year. I look to buy good companies now.
I don't know how much money they're going to make. You know, I don't think they're going to loan that money back to American consumers to buy houses or buy automobiles or to buy anything. I think they're going to take that cheap money from the Fed. They're going to send it abroad. They're going to buy foreign assets. They're going to buy commodities. They don't want any more of this stuff on their balance sheet. They've got too much of this paper that is of questionable value.
But Eric, you just said you're buying good companies. What are you buying?
Well, I'm actually buying. I bought a lot of Citicorp recently. I bought a couple of the names in the financials that I've stayed away from for a year and a half, only because I really believe as you bring those short-term interest rates down and they go ahead and loan them out at higher rates later, they're generating capital. These financials, in my opinion, are a
But,
buy right
Gary,
Be
now.
happy to
how do
know
you
that
buy-
they're up today, by the way.
Gary?
How do you buy a company that you have no idea what their earnings are going to be? You know, Citigroup, Citicorp, whatever their name is these days, has no idea what their numbers are. They keep every 2 months are coming out with more and more losses. We just got it from AIG, and I just think there's more to go. I think, you know, you may get a trade out of them, but as an investment, I think there's a lot to be worked out, and it's not going to take weeks.
Well, we have a rough idea now. It was hard to get a handle on it for the subprime mess for a while. We have a rough idea that we're roughly halfway through it, or maybe better. So you don't think so,
We
Peter?
have no idea what these assets are
But the
worth.
consensus is we're roughly halfway through the thing
Well, the
right now.
consensus is wrong. The consensus didn't even see this coming. You know, remember,
That's a great point.
We're
That's a good
in a
point.
bear market. We've been in a bear market. Go back to 2000. The Nasdaq was at 5,000. Gold was under $300 an ounce. Here we are 8 years later. Gold is over 900, and the Nasdaq is less than half of what it was.
But the reason why gold is going, I mean, look, you and I have a different opinion on this. I see the reason why gold and energy both are going up is because you have this worldwide economy that's growing like crazy. And gold, well, I don't think we're going to disagree on that. And when that happens, energy costs are going to go up, and therefore energy stocks will rise overall, and so will almost all of your metals, especially
we had
gold.
economic growth in the 90s.
This actually all comes to a point when you talk about platinum. Platinum went over $2,000 an ounce today. It pulled back just a bit, but this was all on the fact that all of those South African mining operations can't get enough electricity. And so their operations have to be shut
That's not
down.
for the last 8 years. We've been in a bull market for a long time.
Well, we've been in a commodity bull market for about 8 years. Peter's right, but we spent the 90s being in a commodity bear market.
right.
If you
That's
want to take
over
the
now.
90s,
The economy grew.
Right, but the economy grew, but also from 1990 to 2000, I can't even think of a commodity that went up in price during that 10-year period.
No, they didn't.
Now, since 2000, they're off to the
Let
races.
me just ask you,
Very-
one thing that most people here, I think, agree on is that Greenspan made a mistake of keeping rates so low for so long. That's part of the problems that we're working our way through right now. But do we have to go through a real contraction in order to squeeze that inflation out of our economy?
No, look, this is a Greenspan-Bernanke recession here. This is caused by these guys. First of all, bringing rates down too slow, then keeping them down too long, then bringing them up too fast. You went from 1% to 5.25% the Fed funds rate. That crushed the real estate market.
Gary Kay, last word, 10 seconds.
Yeah, just getting back to gold, it's up because of one word, inflation, and anybody who thinks otherwise has something coming to them in the future.
All right, there
Eric
we go.
raised his hand, but we'll have to discuss that for another day as we hear the closing bell.